Perfect. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Happy Friday. Beautiful sunny day, a little cool. I will call the Transportation Committee of April 16th to order. I'll ask that Lindsay, she'll take the roll.
Okay, thank you, Chris. We've got Chuck Abraham. I saw him on the list. Yeah, okay. Darwin Burkhart, Kevin Carrier, Lynette Ciavarella.
I did.
David Kralik here for Metro.
Thank you, David. Michael Connolly,
Yes, here.
John Paul Deepla,
Present.
John Donovan, Doug Ferguson,
Present.
Tony Griep, Lisa Lawson Stark, Jessica Hector Sue,
Morning here.
Tom Kelso, Fran Claus, or Jackie,
Jackie Forbes present.
Christina Kopkowski,
Here.
Eric Llewellyn,
Here.
Chris Hebert, Tara Orban,
Present.
Jessica Ortega, Heidi Persad, Tom Rickert,
Present.
Brian Carlson,
Present.
Mayor Rockingham,
Here.
Joe Schofer,
Here.
Dave Seglin,
Here.
Chris Snyder,
Present.
P.S. Siraj, Scott Weber, Audrey Wenink,
Here.
and Amy Lee for Rocco.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay,
Chris,
thank you all.
Emma on staff. You had Tony Griep, Kevin Carrier, and Heidi Persad join after you called their names.
Thank you.
John Donovan's here too.
Great.
Jeff Shelkey's here just to listen in.
Okay. Is there anybody else we missed? So none. Okay, thank you all. So we'll move on to agenda changes and announcements. I'll start off by saying, as permitted by the governor's disaster declaration of January 8, 2021, the determination has been made that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent for this committee. To ensure that the meeting is as transparent as possible, we posted the meeting materials approximately 1 week in advance. We'll provide a recording of this meeting linked to our website, and we'll take all votes by roll call. So with that, I'll ask if there are any agenda changes. Hearing none, we'll move on to announcements. Are there any announcements?
Staff
Also
does
here.
not have any announcements.
Okay, perfect, great. Move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes. I will ask if there is a motion to approve the minutes of February 26th as presented.
Mayor Rockingham, so approved.
Thank you, Mayor.
Tom Rickert seconds.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Is there any comment? Hearing none. We'll take a roll call vote will be needed. So Lindsay, you're up.
Okay, Chuck Abraham, Kevin Carrier,
Aye.
David Kralik,
Aye.
Michael Connolly,
Aye.
John Paul Deepla,
Aye.
Doug Ferguson.
Aye.
Jessica Hector Sue,
Aye.
and Jackie Forbes,
Aye.
Christina Kopkowski,
Aye.
Eric Llewellyn,
Was that an aye?
That was an aye.
Tara Orban,
Aye.
Heidi Persad,
Aye.
Tom Rickert,
Aye.
Brian Carlson,
Aye.
Mayor Rockingham,
Aye.
Joe Schofer,
Aye.
Dave Seglin. I think that was an aye. Chris Snyder,
Aye.
Audrey Wennick,
Aye.
and Amy Lee.
Aye.
And was there anyone I didn't catch? Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. The motion carries. Move on to item number 4, committee reports. I think staff provided committee update via email prior to the meeting or through their website. However, Aaron has joined us to provide an update on activities of the CMAP board. So I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Great, thanks. Happy Friday, everyone. Good to see you. We just wanted to share a few brief items of note from our board meeting, and I think we've actually had 2 board meetings since this committee last met. But yesterday, the CMAP board met. We mostly focused on legislative activities, both at the federal and the state level. But I'll make a few notes on sort of what we're seeing happen at the federal level. You know, we know that in addition to the $30 billion in transit operating assistance, the American Rescue Plan had about $350 billion in emergency funding for state and local aid, including direct allocations to counties, cities, and towns, something that I know many of our organizations were advocating for, getting these funds to organizations beyond just sort of the state and biggest municipalities here. So, you know, we know that some of these funds will be delivered sooner rather than later, but we anticipate that it will be distributed in about 2 different pots, 2 tranches. The first one will be paid early May, and the second one will be about a year later. So we are continuing to monitor that, and we'll have further guidance or information and updates on this as information becomes available. I have also been conducting our legislative activities at the federal level this past couple of weeks here, so engaged with all of our delegations. We've been talking with them a lot about our transportation reauthorization principles, our shared principles that we worked on last year. And then again, talking a lot about community projects and earmarks, or the new member designated projects as well. So we've provided information from the Transportation Improvement Program to all of the congressional districts. We've met with district staff and DC staff to talk with them about what's included and what's not. We've had a few, there are a few congressional districts that are requiring a letter from the MPO. At this point in time, our letters are simply just acknowledging whether or not the project is in the active years of the TIP and the process by which it would go into the TIP. So we aren't at this point evaluating projects or setting priorities in any other way. We just are confirming that the project is in the active year of the TIP, and or how the projects would go through the process to get into the TIP, which includes this committee. Let's see what else. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that I believe you and your organizations, if it wasn't you as the designated contact, but that last time we met as Transportation Committee, I believe you got a briefing on our fares, fines, and fees work. The report was released last week. We've had a lot of interest in it, and we have sent the executive summary, and we'll be sending a few hard copies to elected leaders across the region here. You know, I think one of the things that this work really highlights again is some stuff that's not exactly groundbreaking here, right? That residents with low incomes and low income households across our region spend 16% of their income on transportation, compared to those with higher incomes that spend about 6%. And as we think about sort of what we can do as a region, I think one of the things that was most surprising to me is that really focusing on a well-connected multimodal transportation system is probably the best thing that we can do as a region to help support people getting access to jobs and places to live, and you know, all of the places that people need to go. And I know that's something that's top of mind for all of the members of this committee here. Also surprising too, just a couple other notes here, were just that households with low incomes take 20% more transit trips than other households. And if you take out workday trips, that number doubles. So low income households really do utilize transit in ways that, you know, average income and higher income households don't. And, you know, obviously there's a land use component here too, but I think again, it speaks volumes in terms of how we need to help support more equitable solutions across our region. And then I think the last sort of figure that I'll mention here too is that, traffic safety violations, for instance, we looked at just sort of if you got a ticket for going through a stop sign, or even for something like, a broken tail light, for example, on average, being able to pay those fines require about 16 hours worth of low income work on average. And that's about a half a week's worth of work for somebody who may be, hopefully employed 40 hours a week. So, all of this research is really our region's first look at understanding how these fees, fares, and fines impact low-income households, because I think you all know that we want to find ways to sustain our transportation investments. And I think that we want to think about how some of the tools that we have in the toolbox don't overly burden sectors of our region and people who live in the region. So the work that was done here, I think our next steps are really to reach out to organizations, our implementing partners, to see if there's opportunities for us to advance this work. We know that there are lots of trade-offs, so we certainly aren't asking that everybody take on all of these recommendations. But as there's opportunity to refine, and as you're going out and thinking about new technologies and tools, we'd be happy to talk with how this work might help inform some of the decisions or educate local elected officials on some of these research findings that we have here. We'll be specifically using it as we look to our mobility recovery work and our safety action agenda item, or our safety resource group that we've developed here too. So again, this is good work. It's foundational. I want to just commend the team that worked on this. But as you see opportunities for us to engage with you, we are more than happy to. Your boards, your technical committees, and others. We really want to make sure that we're, bringing folks up to speed on some of these findings. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but appreciate a little bit of time on your agenda here.
Thank you, Erin. Does anybody have any questions of Erin and her update? I had one. I'm just curious, Erin, whether you've heard or you're reading the tea leaves with regard to potential member designated projects, if those do come to fruition. Is there a targeted time frame that those dollars have to be obligated or spent, or is it over the life of the typical? I think it's a 6-year bill.
So I think we were seeing, and I'll double check. I thought that I saw that they needed to be obligated within like the 3 or 4 year time frame of the TIP. Tim's nodding his head yes here. So they're near term projects than I think the earmarks that we in this region were used to previously, and that's a good thing, I think. Tim, anything else?
We heard the same thing, Erin. We heard a 4-year spend down of those funds.
Yeah, thanks.
Spend down or obligation? I'm just curious, just because sometimes the obligation and spend can be, a year, multiple year difference.
That's a good point. We heard expend, but until they actually write the bill and pass something, who knows what the final language will say. I think they meant obligate, even though when we were told that they used the word expend.
Okay. I would think we'd be more interested in obligate, just because sometimes spending those dollars down, getting them on the street, and then paying them. Those projects may last construction seasons, multiple seasons. So, okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Erin. Appreciate it. So we'll move on to item number 5, the FY19-24 TIP. Amendments and administrative modifications. I will turn it over to Russell.
Okay, thank you. Included in your packet today is a memo detailing the 56 TIP changes contained in the formal TIP amendment 21-04 and the 172 TIP changes contained in administrative amendments 21-04.1 and 21-04.2. As seen in the memo, formal amendments resulted in an increase of $764 million in total project costs for all prior, current, and future years. Administrative amendments added $1.29 billion to the TIP. The net change for the total cost in the TIP from all amendments resulted in a little bit over $2 billion being added to the TIP in prior, current, and future years. As shown in the memo, cost changes comprised most of the formal changes, while most of the administrative amendments were the result of project phases being converted to or from advanced construction. The amendments, along with the memo, were posted on April 9th for the committee and public review. Approval of formal TIP amendment 21-04 is requested, and I can answer any questions there may be at this time.
Thank you, Russell. Are there any questions for Russ? Not seeing a lot of, okay, so I appreciate it. So at this point then, I'll entertain a motion to approve the TIP amendment 2104.
Dave Seglin, I'll move approval.
Thank you, Dave. Is there a second?
Mike
That's
Conley,
Mike.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mike. Motion is seconded. There's no questions, so we'll ask Lindsay to do a roll call.
Okay, I'll start with Chuck Abraham. Can I get a visual cue of your vote if I can't hear you? Thank you. All right, Kevin Carrier,
Aye.
David Kralik.
Aye.
Mike Connolly,
Aye.
John Paul Deepla,
Aye.
Doug Ferguson,
Lisa know when she calls me.
Jessica Hector Sue,
Aye.
and Jackie,
Aye.
Christina Kapkowski.
Aye.
Thank you. Eric Llewellyn,
Aye.
Tara Orban,
Aye.
Heidi Prasad,
Aye.
Tom Rickert,
Aye.
Brian Carlson,
Aye.
Mayor Rockingham,
Aye.
Joseph Schofer,
Aye.
David Seglin.
Aye.
Thank you. Chris Snyder,
Aye.
Audrey Wenink,
Aye.
and Amy Lee.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. The motion carries. We'll move on to item 5.2, which is the update on the semi-annual GO-TO 2050 TIP conformity analysis and TIP amendment. So I'll turn that over to Russ again.
Yep,
Is he
still
more?
me. Included in your packet today is the ON-TO 2050 TIP conformity analysis and TIP amendment 21-06. The CMAP region is a non-attainment area for ozone. Thus, we are required to demonstrate that projects in the TIP conform to the motor vehicle emissions budget for our area through a regional emissions analysis of transportation projects in the TIP. Specifically, projects in the TIP subject to air quality analysis requirements demonstrate when modeled that the region does not exceed its motor vehicle emissions budget, which is shown on the last page of the memo in your packet. The memo and the list of projects that are new or had changes are being released today for a 30-day public comment period that is to end on May 17th. At the next Transportation Committee meeting, after the public comment period is over, we will be seeking approval of this memo. If there are any questions, I can answer them at this time, but this is just an informational item.
Thank you, Russ. Are there any questions for Russ from the committee? I'll see none. Okay. Thank you, Russ. Moving on to item 5.3, self-certification. We'll ask Terry to give kind of an update on the, an update on self-certification.
Good morning, everyone. We're giving you a break from Russell. So by statute, every 4 years, the state and MPO are required to certify the planning process is being implemented in accordance with applicable federal requirements. CMAP is certifying that we are adhering to federal requirements for the transportation planning process and the requirements of various acts such as the FAST Act, the Clean Air Act, the Civil Rights Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Older Americans Act. We are certifying that the MPO and its partner agencies are meeting the requirements of the Metropolitan Transportation Planning Rules, the planning procedures and requirements of the Clean Air Act, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits exclusion for participation in, denial of benefits of, and discriminations under federally assisted programs on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, the prohibition of discrimination for projects receiving financial assistance because of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, disability, or age, the equal employment opportunity of federal and federal aid construction contracts provision in CFR 23, Part 230, the Americans with Disabilities Act, which prohibits discrimination of individuals with disabilities, the Older Americans Act, which ensures a wide variety of programs and services for older Americans, including transportation services, Section 324 of Title 23, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex, and Section 504, the Rehabilitation Act, which prohibits discriminations on the basis of disabilities. So what we are asking you to do is to recommend approval of the self-certification to the MPO Policy Committee for its June meeting. So if there are any questions, I can answer those questions for you.
Are there any questions for Terry? Other than she does much better than Russ? That's more of a comment, right?
It is. He's getting there.
All right, so hearing no questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the recommendation of the self-certification to the MPO Policy Committee.
Tom Rickard motions to recommend approval of self-certification to the MPO.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
Mayor
Second by
Rockingham.
Kevin Carrier. Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
It doesn't matter. Go ahead. Either one.
Mayor wins.
Okay, seconded by Mayor Rockingham. Thank you. Lindsay, we'll ask you to take the roll.
Okay, Chuck Abraham. Kevin Carrier.
Aye.
David Kralik.
Aye.
Michael Connolly.
Aye.
John Paul Deepla.
Aye.
Doug Ferguson.
Aye.
Jessica Hector Sue.
Aye.
Jackie Forbes.
Aye.
Christina Kapkowski.
Aye.
Eric Llewellyn.
Aye.
Tara Orban.
Aye.
Heidi Persad.
Aye.
Tom Rickert.
Aye.
Brian Carlson. Thank you. Mayor Rockingham.
Aye.
Joseph Schofer.
Aye.
David Seglin. Chris Snyder.
Aye.
Audrey Wennick.
Aye.
And Amy Lee.
Aye.
Thank you all. The motion carries. We'll move on to item number 6, community data snapshot. Avery will give a presentation on the potential process and content improvements to the community data snapshot update. So I'll turn it over to Avery.
Great, thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. My name is Avery Goods, and I'm an assistant analyst here at CMAP. As Chris said, I'm here to talk to you today about updates to the community data snapshots and hopefully to get your input on how we can improve the snapshots in the future. So I'll start off with a brief overview of the snapshots, some updates that we're planning to implement for the release in June 2021, and then I'll be opening up the floor for any questions or feedback that this group has. So next slide, please. So the community data snapshots are a series of annual profiles that CMAP generates that summarize data about municipalities, Chicago community areas, and counties in the northeastern Illinois region. So we make a snapshot for all of these geographies. They each get their own. I think it's important to point out that the snapshots aren't reporting any key findings or flagging any numbers as good or bad. They're really just supposed to be simply designed as a central location for this information about our communities. And we know that for this reason, they're often used by local governments and other organizations as a reference for grant writing. So as you can see on this slide, the snapshots contain data about population demographics, housing, transportation, employment, land use, retail sales, water supply, under 2050 indicators that CMAP generates, and more. But these are kind of the main topical areas. And most of that data comes from the Census's American Community Survey. We also incorporate data from the EPA, the Illinois Department of Employment Security, the Illinois Department of Revenue, and other data sets generated by CMAP. Next slide, please. So I figure what this committee is probably going to be most interested in is what transportation data we have in the snapshots. So from the American Community Survey, we have vehicles available per household, mode of travel to work, mean commute time, and then changes over time are going to be between 2000, 2010, and then whatever the most recent American Community Survey year is. And then from CMAP, we have our annual vehicle miles traveled per household, the walkability, which used to be walk scores, but we've changed that to CMAP's walkability layer. So we think that that's an improvement there. And then our onto 2050 indicators are mobility indicators, which are populations and jobs with at least moderately high levels of transportation available or transit available. And then the percent of trips to work from non-single occupancy vehicles. And then we also have some community indicators, which are population and jobs in highly walkable areas. And then we also have data from the Census's longitudinal employer household dynamics program, and that's going to be employment locations, so where are people traveling to for work. Next slide, please. So here I grabbed a screenshot from a 2020 snapshot for Cicero, really just to give you a sense of what the snapshots look like. So they're currently made up of tables that contain data for the main community, the county it's located in, and then the region as a whole for comparison. The snapshots are PDFs that run about 20 pages long, and they can be individually downloaded from our website. They're designed to be super simple and easy to read, print out, and grab data from. So they're really just these tables. There's no visualizations or anything fancy happening there. And then we also have the data available as CSVs, that raw data on the CMAP data hub that's available for public download as well. I'll note that we're exploring creating a more interactive web-based version of the snapshots, but we have no plans to implement that within the next year, and certainly not by the June 2021 release. Next slide, please. And actually, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip this slide. So next one, please. So one of the ways we solicit feedback, and really the main way we have solicited feedback in the past, is a survey that's linked on the Snapshot webpage, as well as the snapshots themselves. So every year we get some responses to the survey. It's totally anonymous, so we don't know who is giving us this feedback. And then this slide just has some suggestions that I've pulled from the survey for data that we've been asked to include in the snapshots. I'll definitely note that these are definitely not all things that we could get reliable data for, but they're really just to give you an idea of what feedback we've received in the past and what people have asked us for. I'd also definitely note that none of this is really transportation data explicitly, so that's another reason why I'm here at this committee. Yeah, and then next slide, please. So I have some questions for this committee now. I think the first question on the screen really captures why I'm here, and that's, are there any data points about communities that you would like to see reported in a future version of the snapshot? I'd be particularly interested if there's anything you thought we're missing right now, if there's anything your organizations use regularly in your work, or anything that your organizations generate that you think could be good to include in the snapshots.
Okay, Avery. I'll start it off. One question is it easy? I think the data is available. Again, since this is a transportation committee, is there information by community that would identify the proximity and availability of transit or transportation options. I know MPC did a big study about a year or so ago, and they talked about the I guess I'll call it sidewalk deserts, and how those, impact accessibility and the like to, for example, transit. I don't know whether you would have anything with this through existing data sources that CMAP has that might say for community, here are the options available to them, but maybe here's the barriers, and try to tie those things together.
Yeah, so I'd say we certainly don't have anything so thorough as a list of all the options that are available within the community right now. They're really just a broad for the whole community, how like what level of transit is available and how walkable is it, but certainly not, I think, to the level that you're talking about. So that is definitely something we could explore. I'm not familiar with what data we have at CMAP for that right now, but definitely something we could look into.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
any other questions?
Joe Schofer
Yeah.
has a suggestion. So I may have missed this in what you described, but my recollection is that CMAP maintains a database of sidewalks. It's a GIS database, and I think it would be really interesting to see that, and also to see not just the census data, but carrier data on alightings and boardings in communities, both standard transit and ADA.
Yeah, thank you. Those are both great ideas. I know we definitely have and love our sidewalk inventory, and yeah, could definitely incorporate that as well as the carrier data as well.
Chris, if I can jump in too, it's Kevin with Lake County, and thanks for the presentation, Avery. It was really good. Kind of dovetailing on what Chris said too, this may be too granular, but it's maybe something for future consideration with surveys too, but maybe trying to get like mode choice. You talk about the percentage of like SOV, but if there's a way to kind of get to that, not only what's available, but what are people using? I know in Lake County it's heavy SOV, but people that are choosing, are they taking the bus or train or a combination of both or something like that? Maybe something of interest as well in the future. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Audrey Winning from MPC. If I could build on Kevin's comment, I was thinking the same thing. Maybe it's possible to use the replica data that is available that is about all trips, not only work trips, and it could show the mode share by community for either work trips separated out or all trips. I think that would be a really good indicator.
Yeah, thank you. We are exploring what we can do with the replica data for the snapshots right now. So that's something I'll bring up.
Hey, this is Jessica Hector Sue. I'll agree with that. I think mode share data would be really helpful. For those of you looking for ridership data, transit ridership data, that is available on our RTAMS website that RTA hosts. So CMAP could certainly use that to add data to the community data snapshots as well. I had a slightly different question unrelated to transportation. Have you considered looking at jurisdictions and including jurisdictional information on the community data snapshots, showing which congressional districts, state and federal each municipality is in and so forth?
I don't know if we have considered that in the past, but that's definitely something that we probably should. So I will raise that with the project team for sure.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be really helpful. That's something, again, we actually used to have on RTAMS. We decided to pull off of RTAMS partly because when we first developed RTAMS, there was not, RTAMS is RTA's data sharing website, for those of you who aren't familiar. We used to have it on there, but it's pretty readily available on the internet, but sometimes you have to do a little hunting. So I think it would be a good role for CMAP to pull that information together on these, since you're already putting them together.
Well, and from the Will County standpoint, as a county with 2/3 of our communities crossing county borders, it would be interesting to note, especially for those communities that cross those borders, are we showing the difference between, say, Cook County and Will County, or DuPage County and Will County? Or is it all just conglomerated into one? I think, because I know there is typically some sort of difference when you cross the border. And then the other thing that I've been thinking about, we have some communities that are unincorporated, yet are still more of a community structure. How are those going to be reflected in something like this? Because I don't think they are now. They're similar to a neighborhood in the city of Chicago, but they're unincorporated in the county system. So I know we have a couple in Will County. I don't know about the other counties, if they've got those types of communities that are technically unincorporated, but set up as more of a community.
So yeah, I think you're right that right now we are not really capturing the differences between maybe a municipality that's split between counties, how different things are between the areas that are in what county. And yeah, I don't think we are currently capturing much of any unincorporated location data, and that is something we can look into how we could do that. Yeah, thank you.
Avery, in your opening remarks, did you say you've done this for all, I don't know the number, 234 communities in the region? Did I hear you say that? Okay.
Yeah, we have.
Okay, that's extensive. I'd like to review each community one by one if we could during this meeting, if anybody's got the time.
Motion does not pass.
Is there any other comments? And now, Avery, you said you're doing something and wrapping some up, and we'll issue an updated report here in the next month. You said June. You mentioned a June 21 date.
Yeah, so that will be when next year's batch of snapshots are released. Will likely be in June of this year.
Okay, that's great. Okay. Well, thank you, Avery, and members for the input. We'll now move on to item 7, kind of an update. Lily will provide an update on the 2021 accelerated call for planning assistance and the success of that program. So I'll turn it over to Lily.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Lily Neppel. I'm an assistant planner with CMAP, and today I'm going to provide a general overview of this year's call for planning assistance, which we held in January of 2021. And I'll discuss the types of assistance that we offered and how we evaluated applications and ultimately selected awards. Next slide, please. So this year, CMAP coordinated with the Regional Transportation Authority, RTA, to host a small call for communities to apply for technical assistance offerings. And this year's call for planning assistance was a little different from the annual call that we usually hold, the call for projects, in that it was a more targeted call for communities to apply for a limited selection of technical assistance offerings. And it was initiated in response to the regional impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and was closely tied to CMAP's existing embedded staff planner program, which is a program that provides support to capacity constrained communities to help advance local planning initiatives. So it was a bit more focused than it's been in years past. Any local government was eligible to apply for the call, but this year, CMAP and the RTA specifically prioritized awards based on community need, and we used CMAP's community cohort evaluation tool to prioritize communities. And that community cohort evaluation tool, it sort of categorizes communities into cohorts based on incomes, tax bases, population sizes. So we prioritized the communities that have lower incomes, smaller tax bases, or smaller population sizes to ultimately receive assistance during this call. Next slide, please. CMAP offered 6 types of technical assistance that communities could apply for in the 2021 call for planning assistance, and these are all shown on the screen to the left under CMAP. The types of assistance that we offered primarily focused on local government capacity building and implementation of previously completed plans. So starting from the left, those include capital improvement programming, where CMAP will help local governments develop a successful capital improvement program. safety planning, where CMAP will help local governments address vehicular, pedestrian, bicycle, and safety challenges in their communities. And then the 3 offerings that are in the second column to the left, those are all part of CMAP's Embedded Staff Planner program, which is one of the programs under CMAP's local government capacity building set of services. And those include the NEXT program, where we'll help communities take the next steps in implementing LTA plans. Resource Opportunity Impact, or ROI, where CMAP will help local governments prepare for grant opportunities. And the Consortium on Public Space Innovation, where CMAP will help communities address the shared challenges around the creative use of public space in response to COVID-19. And then the RTA offered 3 types of assistance on the right. Those include active mobility and curb management plans, developing special funding districts, and zoning code updates in transit-served and in transit-oriented development areas. And then jointly, CMAP and the RTA offered developer discussion panels, which basically help local governments to address local economic development challenges, strengthen developer connections, and solicit guidance on ways to attract investment. Next slide, please. So it's important to note that we performed extensive outreach before and during the application period, primarily because we were targeting cohort 3 and 4 communities. We wanted to make sure that the word was out and every cohort 3 and 4 community that wanted to apply for this call could apply and knew about it. So we utilized our local government network for this outreach. And if you're not familiar with the local government network, we call it the LGN. And it's essentially each of our staff are paired with a municipality or county. So we have a staff person for all the municipalities and counties within our region, and they share information, resources. It's really a tool for CMAP to use to engage with our local governments. So we used that to make sure that all cohort 3 and 4 municipalities were aware of this opportunity before the application period even opened. And we sent out a couple physical letters actually to communities where email wasn't the optimal form of communication. So then midway through the application period, we used the local government network again to send out a second email to all the cohort 3 and 4 municipalities that had not applied yet. So like I said, we just really wanted to ensure that every community that wanted to apply had the opportunity to do so. Next slide, please. The call for planning assistance opened on January 20th and applications were due on February 3rd. So it was a 2-week total application period, and we made it that time frame because it was a more focused call with a very, very simple and streamlined application. So during that time, applicants, they just completed a super brief form. It was essentially a checkbox for each of those offerings that applicants could apply for. And they were able to check whichever ones they were interested in. And as I mentioned, during that time, we performed additional outreach during the application period to make sure that all cohort 3 and 4 municipalities were aware of this opportunity. Then CMAP and the RTA reviewed applications during February and March and reached out to applicants with any questions or clarifications that we had. Then notification letters were sent out in early March, and most accepted projects are expected to begin within 6 months of that notification, or some of them have already begun. Next slide, please. We are excited to say that we had 41 total applications for the 2021 call for planning assistance, and that's between CMAP and RTA offerings. And most of those applications were from the high need and very high need communities that we were targeting. So we saw that as a success. And of those high need and very high need communities that applied, 16 of them applied for CMAP programs, and many applied for more than one type of technical assistance, since that was an option. So from those 16 communities, we had 11 applications for capital improvement programming, 3 for the Consortium on Public Space Innovation, 7 for developer panels, 8 for the next program, 9 for resource opportunity impact, and 5 for safety planning. Next slide, please. The evaluation process, it was pretty straightforward this year since we did have more of a targeted approach of focusing on cohort 3 and 4 municipalities. That was really our main evaluation criteria was, is this a cohort 3 or 4 municipality? Along with the fact that there was a more limited selection of technical assistance offerings, it made it a bit more streamlined since they could just check a box in the application. It was very straightforward. Like I said, communities were allowed to apply for more than one type of technical assistance, and but generally we only offered one type of assistance per community. We tried to be really transparent from the get-go about the quantity of projects that we were planning to take on for each type of assistance so that communities would be aware of that ahead of time, because we did sort of have like an idea of how many projects we were planning to take on. And throughout the application evaluation process, the project managers for each of these types of technical assistance were really involved and reached out to the applicants with specific questions about like location and other details that helped us to determine what that scope of work would potentially be for that project. Next slide, please. So finally, here is a list of the awarded projects. And I want to point out that the cohort 3 and 4 communities are listed in bold. So for capital improvement programming, we awarded Berwyn, Burlington, Calumet Park, Harvey, Linwood, Stager, and Thornton. For safety planning, we awarded Bellwood, Calumet City, and Riverdale. The developer discussion panels is still TBD because we're still in the process of evaluating those applications. For the next program, we awarded Robbins, the Lake County Land Bank Authority, Madison, Chicago Heights, and Summit. Resource Opportunity Impact, we awarded Dalton, Harvey, Lansing, Marengo, University Park, and Waukegan. And then for the Consortium on Public Space Innovation, we awarded Berkeley, Harvey, Lamont, and Morton Grove. And you'll notice that most of these municipalities are bolded because they are cohort 3 and 4 communities. For the Consortium on Public Space Innovation, that is a collaborative effort. So this time around, we felt like it might be useful to have a mix of cohort 3 and 4 communities with cohort 1 and 2. So just wanted to point that out too. Next slide, please. So this concludes the presentation on the 2021 call for planning assistance. If you'd like any additional information, please visit our webpage that's linked on the slide. Next slide, please. Or feel free to contact me. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll now take any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Lily. I had a question. Is this being done by in-house staff at CMAP, or are you bringing on like third parties to assist?
So are you referring to like the types of technical assistance that we're offering?
Right, yes.
Yeah, so both. So for some of the projects, we are doing it in-house, and then for other projects, they are consultant-led. So for safety planning and capital improvement programming, those are the 2 consultant-led projects, and the others are in-house.
Okay. I think I've said this before among these LTAs in that don't be afraid to reach out to counties. We may be able to provide some assistance, whether it's staffing or expertise in these areas. So I hope I speak for all my county partners on the call, to engage us to the extent that we can assist in any way we can on these. So with that, are there any other questions for Lily?
I'll just add to what Lily said. Thanks, Lily, for that overview. CMAP's a great partnership in this. The RTA board approved RTA's 6 projects yesterday too. So we have an active mobility and curb management plan that we'll be doing for Albany Park with the city of Chicago. We have 3 TOD's zoning code updates in Berwyn, Maywood, and Robbins, a special funding district for the village of West Chicago, and then a developer discussion panel in Brookfield. So that should round out a really nice program for us both to be working on.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Any other comments or questions for Lily? No? Oh, we got a new screen. I do look good today. Okay, with that, then we'll move on to item 8. Other duties as assigned. Thank you, Lily, and other duties assigned for Lindsay. So we'll turn it over to Lindsay. Item 8, Garfield Green Line South Action Plan.
Okay, thank you for having me present more than just calling your names for the roll call. Because I also work in the local planning program, and I'm the manager for the Garfield Green Line South Equitable Transit Oriented Development Action Plan, and that is quite a mouthful. And when we say ETOD, what we're really talking about is an approach to development and that's around transit that centers the needs of underserved, primarily Black and Brown communities through policies and programs that look to reduce disparities, prevent displacement, and foster thriving, healthy communities. So I'm going to give you a little overview on this particular project and go over the timeline that we have for the project, as well as a timeline that looks back on historic impacts and events in the community, as well as go through our digital deliverables and talk about the next steps. As we've talked to a number of residents and stakeholders, we keep hearing we don't need another plan. This could be considered an over-planned community, and it is almost harmful to try to take the community through another visioning process without seeing the improvements that have been recommended or action taken on past recommendations. So we're really focusing in on the task at hand, which is to update the elevated Chicago work plan for the Green Line South community. But we also want to pull in from these past plans that have been done without reinventing the wheel, but look back on the recommendations and see where progress has been made and where we could serve as a vehicle to help make that connection between the government agencies that could be responsible for implementation and the community that has been asking for certain changes. The project area focuses on the Garfield station and the half-mile area around it. The elevated Chicago Green Line South community table chose the Garfield station as the station to focus on, primarily because of the Green Line South stations. There are a very large number of vacant properties. More than 4 of every 10 parcels are vacant, and of those, more than 60% are city owned. So we see that there is an opportunity to bring the community on board and having them lead the process of figuring out what is important and what will benefit the people who currently are living there. We were set to launch our engagement last spring, and that did not happen. So the pandemic really threw us for a loop with what we had intended to do. And this helped us in the sense that we were able to take more of an inward focus, look back deeply through historic events and policies that our agencies have done. And I didn't mention, but we are partnering with the RTA to help do this project that the Elevated Chicago Consortium has requested. And we have been collecting information for the existing conditions report, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what that is like right now. And we are moving into the phase of pulling together a resident advisory council that will help us develop the framework for the action plan to identify immediate steps that we can take and help encourage agencies and organizations to take. And this process should go through about the end of the year. So I mentioned that we are pulling together a historic timeline. We did want to pull out the transportation history, which is shown with that green line at the top of this first part of our history document. And following in the example of the United for a Fair Economy timeline, we looked at, with our subjective lens of what policies, programs, or events had a helpful impact on the community, highlighted in green, and those that might have been harmful, highlighted in pink. And the population of the area was steadily increasing, and then in the 1940s, we saw a number of harmful policies and programs, such as redlining, which didn't allow certain neighborhoods to get easy access to loans from the federal government for housing, but we also found that this impacted businesses in their ability to secure access to capital, whether it was to improve businesses or to grow. So a lot of businesses packed up and left the area. We also had the Illinois Blighted Areas Redevelopment Act, the Land Clearance Commission, neighborhoods cleared out to put in the highway. And then from the 50s on, we saw a steady decline in population, as I would argue a result of many of these harmful policies that made it really difficult to stay in the community unless you didn't really have any other choice. We had a number of changes to transportation or impacts, such as in the 90s when the entire line was shut down for a couple of years. But in recent years, we've seen a lot of positive activity in the community, and we've seen the population decline plateau. So we see that as a positive thing. CMAP talks a lot about disinvested communities, and sometimes it's so easy to understand what that means. But when we look at the historic transit maps, the Green Line South, which was one of the first branches of the CTA rail to be developed, at its peak, it had 5 branches and 47 stations. And right now we've got 2 branches and just 12 stations. And the removal of all these stations has really led to very wide spacing between the stations. So for the communities that were relying on it, it made it harder to make that your primary form of transportation. And as I mentioned, the 2-year shutdown really cut off this vital lifeline for many of the residents. Another way that our infrastructure can lead to disinvestment is the barriers that are created. Oops, this is in my way. In this area of the 16 east-west streets between 49th and 63rd, there are only 3 that continue both east and west, and this ends up funneling your traffic into just a few high traffic, more dangerous roadways. And some of those barriers include the Dan Ryan Expressway and the freight lines to the west. We've got the park to the east and the highway and freight lines to the south. And in the north-south direction, we have a lot of pretty low traffic, multi-lane, one-way streets. And because there's so much vacant property, there aren't a lot of cars parked on the street. So it really gives this sense of a highway driving, and the community has suffered the impacts of a lot of speeding on those streets. But we also want to talk about all the really good things that the neighborhood has. We have, with the Chicago Youth MAP Corps program and through CMAP, we identified 175 existing assets in the community. These are joy centers, businesses, community organizations, and institutions, and shared public spaces. So we want to make sure that whatever we do really builds upon the work that is already happening here and the groups that are already making the neighborhood a valued place to many people. Our existing conditions report, I will share a link to this in just a minute. We created an interactive really visual website that was at the request of the community table to make it a little more exciting than some of our other plans or our first drafts for them were. So we had some really great photos given to us from the Washington Park Camera Club and the photographer Sandra Steinbrecher. And we break down each of these topics with some of it having history of different specific points in the neighborhood, as well as what the current conditions are. And then we have a tie-in to our engagement site, and we collected a series of YouTube videos. It started out as a project for my team members who, because of the pandemic, couldn't join me on the tour with Gian Foreman, who was a local developer. We wanted to have them and give them an ability to see some of these great things in the neighborhood, but we thought that he did such a great job with this tour that we wanted to make them public. And so we've got 4 of those. We are building up our engagement website that uses the same platform as most of our LTA projects, which has a number of links to the different elements of the plan, allows for people to give their email to stay informed of the project, as well as take a survey, submit ideas. And when I say ideas, this is where we are taking those past plan recommendations, and we will give people the opportunity to share these, like them, comment on them, or add their own. And we haven't yet done our push to get that out. So that is our current phase right now as we look to do our engagement push. So we'll do a lot online. We will see what can happen with in-person as far as that goes, but we are working to form a resident advisory council, and thanks to the generous support from the RTA, we will be able to have engagement funds that will help support this effort and compensate people for their time. And we will be promoting our survey and the other engagement page. And the RTA is also leading an inclusive asset-based economic assessment for the area. So we are looking forward to how that comes out. And we will be doing more on assessing that progress on past plan recommendations and prioritizing need with the help of the Resident Advisory Council once we've got that formed. And then we will start to build out the framework of the action plan. So that is where we are now, and we look forward to engaging the community further as we get started in this phase of the project. And I did want to highlight this really beautiful new building about a block away from the Garfield station, which is artist housing in the neighborhood. So I thought I would end on that nice, pretty picture. So that's all I've got for you today.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Well done. Are there any comments, questions, discussion? I'm just curious, with so many of the parcels owned actually by the city, are they involved in this, or is this CMAP and kind of the local community, and then that will bubble up to to the city?
So we are working with the DPD and meeting with them to make sure that we align our efforts, because through the Invest Southwest, DPD is doing a lot of work in the area and also looking to figure out how best to use and develop the vacant land that they have, or sell it, I guess.
Lindsay, this is Dave Seglin. Kind of following up on Chris's question, I see a lot of the comments had to do with projects that would fall to CDOT, street improvements and such. Have you reached out to CDOT at all about any of this? Because we're moving forward on our own projects in those areas, and it'd be good to coordinate before we do something that prevents anything that you're looking at.
That is a great point. I have been in touch sort of on a one-off basis of asking CDOT folks for information, but we don't have a primary contact that we are looking to call on. So maybe I could get a name from you of somebody that we should talk to.
Yeah, let me reach out to our people, see who the appropriate one is, and I'll connect you.
Great idea. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments?
Chris, yeah, this is Mike Connolly. I was just going to say we're glad to see this type of emergence of the neighborhood around this station. We spent $43 million rebuilding that station in 2019. We finished that up during 2019, and we restored the station itself. We added escalator and elevator capacity. We actually restored the historic old station house on the south side of Garfield there, and basically have turned it over to the community to use. I think right now it's a part of an artist collective, which is associated with that artist housing there, associated with the university right now. And it's heartening to see the neighborhood recognizing that the station is an important part of the neighborhood and has been since 1892 when it opened. It was really the pathway to the World's Columbian Exposition over in Jackson Park. That's where that green line was built back in the 1890s. So it's got a beautiful, you had some of the art in one of your slides there, but it's got a beautiful art scheme for both inside the station house and up on the platforms and exterior as well by Nick Cave, who really did a super job with that location down there. So I'm glad to see this going. It is an area with a lot of empty lots, and that really the neighborhood is concerned about it, and rightly so, and they're looking to make a difference. And it's good to see you guys working with them and having the RTA help as well. So congratulations.
Yeah, when we looked at the transit ridership data, we saw, the renovation is really beautiful. And in January of 2020, there was a huge increase in ridership at the station. But then, of course, we got COVID.
Yeah, it'll come back around.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none. So thank you so much, Lindsay. You'll take the roll call, please. Just kidding. Okay, we'll move on to number 9, legislative update. We've got Tim and Anthony.
Yes, thank you and good morning. My name is Tim McMahon. I work on our federal government affairs here at CMAP. I just wanted to take a few minutes and provide a brief update on what we're tracking at the federal level. So obviously we're keeping a close eye on surface transportation reauthorization. 2 of the main authorizing committees held hearings this week. The Senate Banking Committee held its first hearing on the public transit title of the reauthorization bill, and the Senate EPW Committee, which usually kind of leads this bill process in the Senate, held its hearing on Wednesday around funding uncertainty facing federal highway programs. So having said that, there's still no clear indication on how the House and Senate committees that covered the revenue portions of this bill would like to pay for the next transportation bill. On the House side, as Aaron has already mentioned, we've been in regular contact with our congressional delegation staff around these member designated projects and that entire process. And just to follow up on the question earlier in the meeting during Aaron's report, I went back and looked at the guidance, and it says all funding does not have to be in the bank at the time of the request, but specific sources must be identified and reasonably expected to be available within the obligation window. So that's the information that we have. It's within that obligation window, like Aaron said. So I just wanted to know also that the House T&I committee deadline for those projects is next Friday, April 23rd. But for most delegation members here in the region, their internal deadline is likely today or is already passed, so that they have time to review the requests that they're receiving before they submit them to the committee. So separately, we're also tracking another earmark type process through the House Appropriations Committee. Those projects are called community projects funding. Eligibility for those projects is a bit broader and covers different appropriations accounts. So funding for stormwater planning grants, drinking water infrastructure grants, workforce training, local economic development, housing, as well as some transportation project funding is included there as well. The deadline for those projects is a week later than the transportation ones, or transportation committee ones rather, and those are either April 28th or 30th, depending on which account that's coming from. But once again, most members probably have a deadline that's sooner than that. So for both of those transportation and appropriations projects, House Republicans have indicated that they are supportive of the return of of earmarks. However, the Senate has still not come to an agreement on whether to bring back this process. So that decision should be coming soon if they want to keep to the timelines that they've already discussed. It's also still unclear how reauthorization will interact with the administration's recently proposed 2.3 trillion American Jobs Plan. Congressional Democrats have said that they are hoping to have an initial bill drafted by the end of May, and the Speaker of the House has said she would like to have something infrastructure related passed by July 4th. So whether that's the Biden infrastructure plan or surface transportation reauthorization, or a combination of the two, is yet to be seen. But if congressional Democrats decide to use the budget reconciliation process again to pass this infrastructure proposal, like they did with the American Rescue Plan, then it's likely surface transportation reauthorization would be considered either separately or potentially even after the jobs plan through the regular committee process and ahead of the expiration of the FAST Act on September 30th, 2021. The last thing I wanted to mention is that earlier this week, USDOT released a notice of funding for $1 billion in RAISE grants, or Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity grants. RAISE grants are the newest iteration of BUILD grants, and before that, TIGER grants. The primary selection criteria for this program is safety, environmental sustainability, quality of life, economic competitiveness, and state of good repair. They have a second selection criteria for partnership and innovation as well. The minimum grant award for this funding is $5 million. The maximum is $25 million per project, and no more than $100 million can be awarded to a single state. Up to $30 million will be awarded to planning grants, including at least $10 million to areas of persistent poverty. The deadline for submission for those grants is July 12th. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you have and also hear about what you're also keeping an eye on at the federal level. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Are there any questions of Tim? Tim, is it possible, we probably have it, but if it's at your fingertips, can you just submit that NOFA for the RAISE grants maybe to this committee?
Yeah, absolutely. I could throw it in the chat right after this. Great. If it allows me to, or I'll just, we can send it out either way.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions of Tim? Seeing none. All right. We'll move on to the state legislative agenda then. Anthony?
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anthony Cefali. I work for Gordon in the Government Affairs group here at CMAP. Just wanted to give everybody a quick update because we did bring bills to the board for their approval and support for this legislative session. We just have a few things just because the legislative calendar was a little bit askew this year. And just a very quick reminder, we review these bills based on their ability to implement key recommendations from ON2 2050. You can check out the full board report and I can share that if anyone is interested, but the CMAP board this legislative session is supporting HB 860. It's the Cook County Assessor's Bill to require income producing property tax data to be disclosed. HB 1953 and SB 117. This is the Illinois State Treasurer's Initiative to allow the Treasurer's Office to fund infrastructure through infrastructure financing firms. And finally, the CMAP board is supporting HB 270 and SB 1766, which would eliminate the local contribution requirement by IDOT for building bicycle and pedestrian facilities. We are in the middle of session. A number of deadlines have been moved around, but the deadline for legislation to leave their chamber of origin is Friday, April 23rd. So we will be watching that closely. I'd be happy to take any questions about our state legislative agenda or any items at this time.
Thank you, Anthony. Any,
This is Dave Seglin with CDOT. I was wondering if you guys looked at HB 253, which had to do with performance measures being used by IDOT in programming.
Thanks for that question, Dave. Yes, we did look at that bill specifically, and we did do an analysis of it. There's some things that we like about it and some other things that we think need some work. So we're talking to people about that. And I know it was amended this week, and we're looking at that language as well.
Thank you.
I will note something that the counties, especially Lake, helped put forward was modifying the definition of a highway in state MFT statutes, but also county option motor fuel tax to give broader flexibility for the use of those fund sources, specifically for bike trails and sidewalks. It did pass the House, we understand, yesterday, so that's exciting. So we're happy to see that. It's amazing how some of these statutes just haven't kept up to date necessarily with how our region and multimodalism is evolved. So that we were excited to see that, and hopefully it'll fare well in the Senate as well. So it's kind of along the lines with the House Bill 270 and the local match requirement for state projects. But this will be locally funded. Any other comments, questions? None? Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Anthony and Tim. We'll move on to item number 10, other business. Is there any of the members that wish to bring something forward to the committee under other business?
Yes, this is Brian Carlson with District 1. I'd just like to let the committee know that we have implemented a new policy kind of following CMAP's lead and what some of the what the mayoral councils are doing with respect to the cohort 4 communities. We've gotten approval from our central office to now use TDC funds to assist the cohort 4 communities with some of their local costs as part of IDOT-led projects. So, you know, for example, if a local agency has a water main that needs to be relocated because of a culvert replacement, we no longer have to put that burden on the cohort 4 community. We're able to cover those funds with the TDC funds. And in addition, if there's matching funds that are required, typically for like locally owned lakes of traffic signals or cost partition and bike ped accommodations, we're now able to relieve them of that responsibility using the TDC fund. So we think this is a big step forward in helping some of these economically challenged communities. It helps IDOT because basically we were not able to advance the projects to letting because the local agencies just couldn't sign the agreements because they didn't have the resources to meet their financial obligations. So it's a win-win for both of us, and I just wanted to make you guys aware of that because you will start to see those TDC funds appearing on IDOT projects in the TIP very soon.
Chair Snyder, may I weigh in on that?
Of course, Executive Director Alman.
Thank you. Brian, I just wanted to say in front of the committee here that this is will be very well received across the region, and we thank IDOT for its leadership in identifying a solution to some challenges that we know communities across our region have. So excited to partner with you and continue to work with you to find innovative ways to help communities that haven't had the resources to move good projects forward. So thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Brian. It's good news. Are there any other business comments?
Chris, I'd like to mention one. Oh, all right.
Was that?
Go ahead, Sarah.
I just I had a comment and a question. Brian, that's wonderful. I'm very excited to hear about that. I think you know, many of us implementation agencies, you know, have had similar challenges in working with communities, you know, to even just to align their budgets for their match, you know, to line up for when our lettings and expenditures are going to happen. So yeah, really looking forward to working with you on that. And my question is just with regards, can you clarify what TE TEC funds are?
I'm sorry, that was TDC funds.
TDC?
Basically, they're the toll credit funds.
Got it. Thank you.
So, yeah, basically, it's not additional money. It's 100% federal, and it does count against our allotment of federal funds. So it does mean that that's less federal funding to spend on other projects. But typically these, we're not talking big dollars. I mean, we're talking, $50, $80, $100,000 for water main relocation, or $20,000, $30,000 match for a bike path. They're not really significant dollars to us as an implementing agency, but they certainly are to those communities that have to struggle to find those resources, and like you said, align them with our project schedule. So yeah, it's not a big movement, but it certainly helps.
Yeah, well, these costs are low cost compared to the overall, size of the capital improvement, but they certainly are high impact. So very excited to hear this. Thank you.
Jessica? Or was
it? Yeah, thanks. Changing subjects a little bit, I just wanted to mention to the group that yesterday we released the results of a survey that we did to talk to riders and lapsed riders of the transit network. One of the things that we've been wanting to know more about through all of COVID is what will happen after COVID and whether people will return to transit. And the survey gave us many useful pieces of information, among them the fact that about 80% of people say that when all of the health concerns are gone, that they will return to their pre-COVID use of transit. So that's really good news. We're definitely optimistic about that part. Obviously, that means that 20% of people may not. So that also presents some challenges to us. We will be using that information. We shared that information yesterday. You might have seen it in the press. And if you listened to our board meeting, you heard us talk with our board about it. But we'll be using that information to help inform step 3 of recovery, which is now where we're moving toward right now. So throughout this year, we'll probably give you some updates on that process. But I just wanted to mention the survey in case anyone is interested. Thanks,
Thank you,
Chris.
Jessica. Yeah, of course. Any other business? Okay, seeing none or hearing none, now we move on to the opportunity for public comment. This is a chance where we look forward to input from our members of the public. So I think what I'll do is I'll turn it over to, would it be Lindsay, to see if we've received anything either through email in advance of the meeting or during this meeting?
We did not receive any public comments.
Did not. Okay. All right then. Well, we've got another hour. So hearing no public comment, we'll move to item 12, the next meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for June 4th, 2021. I presume that will also be at 9:30. So with that, I will see no business. I will call for the adjournment of the meeting. No roll call, right? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Bye.
great weekend.
What do you do with this?